Have you ever wondered who could crack a concrete dam, drain a lake, or wipe out harvests across whole regions with no explosives and no heavy equipment at all? This is not a disaster movie plot. It is a very real story, written by a small creature in a hard shell. The red swamp crayfish, a true terminator among arthropods, went from a beloved Louisiana Cajun delicacy to a global threat to biodiversity. It survives where almost everything else dies, and it eats whatever ends up nearby. The red swamp crayfish began its journey in the warm, murky waters of the Mississippi Basin and along the Gulf Coast. For centuries, it was a natural part of the American South, and locals learned to live alongside it, then eventually turned it into a true culinary symbol. But human greed and carelessness opened that very box of Pandora. People decided they could keep nature under control, and they hauled the crayfish to Europe, Asia, and Africa for its tasty meat, without realizing they were setting loose a perfect biological takeover machine. Take a closer look at it. Its shell is most often colored in deep reds or burgundy tones, like it has already been dropped into boiling water. But that is just a deceptive impression. That color looks more like a warning, a signal of threat and aggression. Adults grow only to about 4 or 5 inches, but size is easy to misread here. Inside that small body are the strength of a bulldozer and the stamina of a marathon runner. The main trick of the red swamp crayfish is its phenomenal talent for digging burrows. This is not about simple little holes in the sand. It is about real underground engineering systems. In the dry season, when a swamp turns into cracked earth, it does not die off like an ordinary fish or less adapted crayfish. It goes deep under the surface, sealing the entrance with an earthen plug. Inside, in cool dampness, it can wait out rain for months. Sometimes these burrows go down 5 feet, sometimes even 6. Picture thousands of these underground diggers all loosening a riverbank or an earthen berm at the same time. The soil slowly starts to look like Swiss cheese. It loses density and stability. And when floodwater arrives, the weakened ground just washes away, opening a path for the water. That is exactly why it becomes public enemy number 1 for irrigation systems and rice fields. In Spain and Italy, farmers panic when they spot the signature muddy chimneys sticking up out of the ground, like smokestacks from tiny factories. That almost guarantees the water will soon drain from the field, and rice roots will be mercilessly clipped by claws. Losses after that can be massive. The most surprising part is that the red swamp crayfish can breathe air. Not exactly like land animals do, but well enough for travel. Its gills are built so that as long as they stay wet, it can move over land without trouble. It can crawl from one body of water to another, covering a few miles in the night dew just to claim new territory. It barely demands anything from water quality. The oxygen level that would kill a noble European river crayfish in minutes does not look like a problem for our main character. It simply rises to the surface and starts using atmospheric air. It even sticks part of its body out of the water, like a tiny submarine switching to snorkel mode. Salinity does not become an unbreakable wall either. Even though it is considered a freshwater species, the red swamp crayfish handles brackish water well in river mouths and lagoons. That flexibility lets it lock in where other species feel stressed and unsafe. Then those spots turn into staging grounds for pushing deeper into continents. Now let us jump to Louisiana, the home of this species. There it is treated with respect and often with real affection. The state is basically obsessed with crawfish. In spring, when the water in rice fields warms up, the season of big hunts and big feasts begins. Here, the crayfish is not seen as a pest. It is the backbone of a multi-million-dollar industry. Louisiana farmers came up with a brilliant way to use the same land twice. In summer, rice grows in the fields. Then in fall, after the harvest is in, the fields are flooded again to give crawfish room, because all that time they were sitting in burrows under the roots. Rice feeds people, and the leftover stalks become food for the crawfish. It is an almost zero-waste system. They catch them using special traps that locals call crawfish traps. Basically, these are wire cylinders with funnel-shaped entrances. Bait goes inside, usually cheap, strong-smelling fish, like herring or catfish. The crayfish follows the scent, crawls in, and then its simple brain cannot figure out how to get back out. The boats used to collect crawfish are a whole separate story. Usually, they are flat-bottomed skiffs with hydraulic drive that pushes them forward through thick mud and vegetation. The fisher stands at the bow and at a crazy pace lifts traps, dumps the catch, and immediately throws the traps back in. The motion does not stop for a second. You cannot send caught crawfish straight into the pot. First, they are rinsed and kept in clean water so their digestive tract clears out silt and grime. This step is called purging. Sometimes salt is poured into the water. People believe it helps the crawfish empty faster, though scientists still argue about how well that really works. A classic Louisiana crawfish boil is always a group event. A huge vat of boiling water where cayenne pepper, lemons, onion, garlic, and signature spice blends are dumped in generously, with zero mercy. The water has to turn fiery red and so spicy that just the steam makes you catch your breath. It is not only about flavor here, it is also about the ritual itself. Along with the crawfish, the pot often gets corn on the cob, baby potatoes, and smoked sausage. Everything is cooked through, then the whole contents get dumped straight onto a table covered in newspapers. No plates and no forks. People eat with their hands, snapping off tails and sucking the juice from the heads. To a first-timer, it looks wild, but locals say that is the right way. The most intense flavor, strangely enough, is in the head section, which many inexperienced people habitually toss away. That is where the hepatopancreas sits, an organ that does the work of the liver and pancreas. It is a fatty, creamy yellow mass. Food lovers call it crawfish butter and treat it as the main prize. But now let us return to the dark side of this story. In 1973, one entrepreneur, honestly believing he was doing something useful, brought the red swamp crayfish to Spain, to Extremadura, and to the Ebro River Delta. He wanted to feed Europe a cheap delicacy. In the end, that became the starting gun for an environmental catastrophe on a continental scale. The crayfish, as you can guess, escaped into the wild fast. Local conditions felt like a resort. Warm winters, no familiar enemies like alligators and raccoons, and a sea of available food. They started reproducing at a terrifying speed. A female red swamp crayfish can lay up to 600 or 700 eggs at a time, and she can do it twice a year. For comparison, native European broad-clawed crayfish reproduce much more slowly and need clean, cool water. The newcomer from America did not just overwhelm them by sheer numbers, it brought biological weapons with it, and local species had no shields at all. This is about crayfish plague. It is a fungal disease that the red swamp crayfish is almost immune to. It carries the spores and stays a host, but it does not suffer. For European species, even contact with spores means certain death. Waters that the American invader entered quickly turned into graveyards for native crayfish. And that is still not all. The red swamp crayfish is omnivorous in the broadest possible sense. It acts like an underwater lawnmower and clears out macrophytes, aquatic plants that provide shelter and food for fish and insects. A lake it enters changes fast, A blooming garden turns into a muddy puddle. The ecosystem loses clarity and stability. It does not turn down animal food either. Fish eggs, tadpoles, mollusks, dragonfly larvae, everything becomes fuel for its relentless metabolism. In some lakes in Kenya, where crayfish were introduced to fight snails that spread schistosomiasis, it did not only wipe out the snails, it ate almost everything that moved slower than its claws. It is especially dangerous for amphibians. Newts and frogs evolved for millions of years without a predator this aggressive, and they were not ready for it. The crayfish finds their eggs and larvae and sometimes attacks even adult animals. It can bite off legs or tails, leaving the victim crippled or simply killing it. In China, it all repeated, but with local twists. The crayfish was brought to Nanjing from Japan back in the 1930s, and for a long time it was seen as poor people food or livestock feed. But in the 1990s, a culinary explosion happened. The small red crayfish, called xiaolongxia there, suddenly became the king of street food. The Chinese, big fans of anything that swims and crawls, learned to cook it in massive volumes. Hot chili, Sichuan peppercorn, oil, garlic, and beer. That is the whole secret of its popularity. Today, China has become the largest producer of red swamp crayfish in the world. Millions of tons are raised there every year. But even in China, where it seems like they will eat absolutely anything, the crayfish still manages to do damage. It destroys rice field terraces that people built over centuries. Its burrows break the local water balance. Water drains away. Rice dries out. Farmers are forced to spend huge money repairing dams and reinforcing banks with concrete. Here is an interesting survival fact. If a pond dries out completely, and even inside the burrow it becomes too dry, the red swamp crayfish can go into suspended animation. Every process in its body slows to the extreme. In that form, it can lie for months, looking like a dried mummy. But the moment water appears, it seems to come back to life all over again. The aggression of this species is genuinely shocking. If two males meet in a narrow spot, a fight is almost inevitable. They lock claws and try to tear each other apart. Losing a claw is not the end for it. Thanks to regeneration, after a couple molts, a new one grows back, even if it is a bit smaller. Cannibalism in the red swamp crayfish is a normal sight. The strong eats the weak, adults wipe out the young. It is a built-in way to regulate numbers. When the population gets too dense, they start eating each other, clearing space for the ones that turned out to be the strongest and most aggressive. One of the boldest but controversial ideas is an attempt to sterilize males. Scientists caught them, exposed them to radiation, and released them back, hoping they would mate with females with no results, lowering the population. But in reality, the toughness of the species won again. Sterile males lost competition to wild alpha males, and females simply chose healthy partners. Evolution seems to have built-in protection even against the atomic age. In Kenya, at Lake Naivasha, things reached an economic tragedy. The crayfish destroyed papyrus and lotus stands, and with them, the spawning grounds for local tilapia disappeared. Fishers who had lived off tilapia catches for centuries lost their income in a short time. Now they have to catch the crayfish itself, but they can sell it only for pennies because local demand is almost non-existent and exporting it requires expensive logistics. Unexpectedly, this story got a continuation in medicine and biotechnology. The shell of the red swamp crayfish, the same trash left behind in tons after feasts, turned out to be an extremely valuable resource. It is used to obtain chitosan, a rare and useful biopolymer. It is used for absorbable surgical sutures, for artificial skin for burns, and even as a platform for delivering drugs to cancer tumors. A destroyer of ecosystems, paradoxically, became someone that helps save human lives. What about the CIS countries? For a long time, it was believed harsh winters would be a reliable barrier against this heat-loving aggressor. But the climate is changing, and red swamp crayfish have already been spotted in warm canal waters near some thermal power plants and in southern regions. Aquarium hobbyists, releasing unwanted pets into city ponds, are launching a dangerous experiment without realizing it. If this species learns to tolerate cold, the consequences for local river crayfish could be fatal. This crayfish is an almost perfect illustration of how natural selection works in the age of the Anthropocene. It is not the strongest and not the fastest, but it knows how to wait, endure, and adapt to any conditions humans create. We pollute water, and it feels better. We build canals, and it turns them into convenient highways. We change the climate, and that only expands its range. Today, this species is already firmly woven into the global ecosystem, whether we like it or not. Completely wiping it out is nearly impossible, so all that remains is to contain and control it. Write in the comments what you think about this species.